Hello, you beautiful souls. Last week I was showing you a couple of different inking tools and how they differ. And today we're going to talk about ink wash. Ink wash is the term used to describe ink that simply has been watered or washed down. By adding water, we're able to get numerous variations of gray. So all we need for today's video is some black ink and some water. I'm starting with a base layer of water before I lay down my ink. I already had my brush in some ink, so it's not the cleanest, but in this case it really doesn't matter. If you know you're going to work with a really wet medium, it also helps to soak and stretch your paper beforehand. Of course, I forgot to do that again. But try to remember doing that because it makes it much easier to work with your medium. I really do enjoy a wet and wet technique, especially with ink. I like that it kind of has its own mind and, I can push it in the direction I want it to go, but ultimately, it will still do its very own thing. Maybe you have worked with ink or ink pens before, and you did your line art and wanted to color over it, and suddenly all your lines got smudged and blurry. Some inks are waterproof and some are not. Make sure you know which kind you're working with before you start. This ink that I'm using is waterproof, so once it dried, there is no going back. Once my base is done and all dried, I start building up my tones. It usually takes a bit of time and I have to repeat the steps several times, but I feel like it's giving the artwork more volume and more details this way. At some point, my brush just decided that it's going to quit on me, and the coating broke off and fell everywhere. I've already been asked a couple of times what kind of brushes I use, and the answer to that is cheap ones. Very cheap ones. Speaking of cheap, working with ink can be a very budget-friendly option. Personally, I prefer working on thicker paper when working with ink, but it's not a necessity, and Up to your own preference, really. One small jar of ink can go a very long way, and I don't know what exactly, but I always perceive ink as a very elegant kind of medium. Maybe because it reminds me of the image of poets and playwrights that back in the days had their fingers covered in ink after writing on new works of art and literature all night, their quills scratching over parchment and scrolls. But then again, maybe I'm romanticizing a little bit too much. For the last details, I already added some darker lines with my brush pen, and now for the really nice contrast, I'm adding some white highlight. I recently started adding a white outline to a lot of my drawings because I really do enjoy the look. It's also a great way to make your images stand out from the background. I heard some artists say that it's a really cheap trick, but I think it looks great. If you don't like it, you just don't do it, but if you enjoy the visual, go for it, regardless of someone else's opinion. I'm also adding a few white highlights that are randomly floating around the tree. This way it looks like it's surrounded by either fireflies or maybe even something a little bit more magical. Either way, I think it's quite fitting. Have you tried working with inks before? If not, now is the perfect time to start. And if you're comfortable with it, share it with the world. All over social media right now, there should be tons of ink drawings, and it's amazing to draw inspiration from. I hope you enjoyed this video, and maybe you feel like getting out your drawing tools now. If you don't want to miss any of my videos, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you again next week. I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you soon. Bye! Ah yes, and always remember, clean up your creative mess once you're done. Alright, bye!